Introducing the Open Palm Podcast, hosted by Jerome Shaw. Available today on your favorite podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor.fm, and many more. The Open Palm Podcast, where the host engages his listeners with inspirational messages, motivating themes, and thought-provoking ideas. Topics include: make more mistakes, how much is your value, don't get right, get going, learning to let go, excellence is a habit, and more. Binge listen today. Subscribe today. It's getting excellent ratings. That's the Open Palm Podcast, hosted by Jerome Shaw. You can also find it on YouTube. Make sure you share it with your social networks and connect on Twitter and Instagram at Jerome Shaw. That's the Open Palm Podcast with Jerome Shaw. Available today on your favorite podcasting platforms. Go listen, download, and subscribe now.
I read a study that said the average person at rest takes about 16 breaths per minute. That same person would be taking, on average, around 960 breaths per hour. Following this trend, it would be said that that person would be taking 23,000 breaths a day. And if we continue down this path, you would be taking 8.5 million breaths per year. Unless we get a lot of exercise, and continuing this trend of an average person at rest, you would be taking around 672 million breaths in a lifetime if you lived to the age of 80. 672 million breaths. 16 breaths a minute. 960 breaths an hour. 23,000 breaths in a day. 8.5 million breaths a year. Just hearing those stats makes me want to take a breath of my own. In fact, just for the moment, I invite you to breathe with me. Just take a short breath. In through the nose and out through the nose. Or in through the nose and out through the mouth. Doesn't that feel good to just breathe? In life, sometimes we forget to breathe. And I don't just mean with our lungs. You know, our lungs can take over when we're not watching, when we're not really taking in conscious breaths, not really being intentional about the way that we breathe. Our subconscious mind, our unconscious, takes over, and things like our heartbeat, things like our breath are just regulated. They're automated. We don't have to think about it, right? But when you look at the species, when you look at the animals, the ones that have the longest lifespan are the ones that breathe long breaths, slow, deliberate breaths. Look at the lifespan of a rabbit or hare versus the tortoise. Slow and steady really does win the race in the end. I would like you to think about something. As the universe breathes and expands, as the animals breathe, as the trees breathe, as the plants breathe, as we breathe, in your life, take time to breathe. And once again, I don't just mean with your lungs, but take time to breathe with your life. You see, there's a time for inhalation and a time for exhalation. There's a time for inhalation, breathing in, taking in information, consumption, reading, watching, listening, acquiring data, acquiring knowledge, studying. And then there's a time for breathing out, letting go, for rest, relaxation, recuperation, recovery. There's a time for breathing in. There's a time for work, massive action, grinding, hustling. And there's a time for breathing out, letting go, releasing. That R&R that we all need. Balance. Balance, my friend. There must be balance. It makes a much healthier life when we are not always leaning on one side of the scale. When we're tipped too far out of balance, often tragic things start to happen in our lives, in our health. It affects our work. It affects our relationships. It affects the people we meet. It affects everything. It affects our progress. So remember, in keeping with the slogan of progress, not perfection, understand that nobody's perfect. Everyone must take time for rest. It is something that we all need. It has been biologically imprinted into us, our DNA. We have to take time to rest. If we don't, we'll burn out, we'll fizzle like a light bulb. Take time for yourself. Be kind to yourself. Love yourself. And understand that you don't have to feel guilty for taking time to breathe. Thank you for listening. This has been Jerome Shaw on TOP, that is the Open Palm Podcast, here in Lake Elsinore, California. The Open Palm means harmony with the world, understanding our place in the world, using our skills accordingly, greeting the world with an open palm instead of a closed fist. My friend, I pray that you received a special message from this episode today, that you would share it with a like-minded individual who is learning and growing and breathing in their life. Pay it forward today to someone else who could use a message like this. And if you especially enjoy these inspirational messages on this podcast, the best way to help would be to become a supporter by opening your browser, going to anchor.fm/jshaw, and supporting the podcast there is much appreciated. You can also become a patron at patreon.com/Jerome Shaw, where you'll find exclusive content I do not put up anywhere else. Just for you, my friend, and have a blessed day or night, wherever you are. Take care.